Greetings and welcome to the Dr. J Vlog Series. It's Monday, May 18th, 2026. And I'd like to do a special episode on thoughts and reflections and actually then do a follow-up piece for the next vlog. But yesterday, May 17th, my wife and I attended the Middle Eastern Spring Market in Covent Garden here in London, Ontario, which boasted some incredible food, music, and various dance troupes from across many of the Middle Eastern countries and cultures. To cite just one specific example, we were enthralled by a group called Koma Afrin, who were Kurds resettled from Syria, originally from Syria, and they performed many of their traditional dances, including their own unique forms of line dancing that you'll often see at their weddings. And then they also invited members of the audience to join them for a couple of the dances. And my wife, being an excellent dancer, joined in, and I merely filmed. But what a remarkable, joy-filled spectacle. From the costumes that they wore to the energy and the choreography. And even though last night's troupe only consisted of 7 dancers, I then learned that Koma Afrin actually has more than 24 performers. And they're on TikTok and other social media platforms if you're interested. I'd show you the film that I took, but I don't want to put anyone at risk, or if they joined in, or anybody who doesn't want to be seen publicly. But also, quite remarkably, I then spoke with an older gentleman afterward who was sort of the de facto leader of last night's performance. And he explained that his village back in Syria had been destroyed by ISIS. Can you imagine? And again, how many families and peoples have suffered these types of tragic losses in different conflicts in different parts of the world? It's just unfathomable to someone such as myself, and probably to most of you who might be seeing or listening to this vlog. So what's the point, Dr. J? Sharing all this remarkable happy stuff, and then you mention this incredibly tragic aspect. Well, of course, the contrast couldn't be sharper. So on the one hand, you have the creative arts, like the dance and the music that we experienced. And every culture produces their many different forms across different disciplines and often multiple styles and genres. I don't know about you, but for example, I love listening then to the music and watching the dancing every time I attend a cultural festival or simply visit a different culture or a different country, like when we were in Brazil a couple of weeks ago, or just even traveling across Canada, going to different towns in Canada, the United States, because you never know what you're going to see. People are incredibly creative. They come up with all kinds of interesting ways to inspire us with their beauty, with their creativity, and so forth. You looked around at the crowd last night, and it was so obvious that everyone, nearly, it seems that everyone was smiling. There's just such a joyful vibe, whether it's something you're familiar with or not. And then, of course, at the end, we clap and we cheer the performers. We show our appreciation for what they've done. But on the other hand, we have these conflicts, the wars, the terrorism, the genocides, etc. And it's what I call, and this is the point of this video, the destructive arts. Now not the so-called the black arts, or the dark arts, or black magic, right, which references the sort of use of supernatural powers for selfish or evil purposes, that sort of thing. Rather, I've decided recently to use the term destructive arts intentionally as the polar opposite of the creative arts. So the creative arts, in the broadest sense, refer to any human activities that are dedicated to the use of the imagination, skill, and creativity aimed at producing aesthetic, expressive, symbolic, communicative, and even, I would say, healing or other kind of life-affirming activities or human efforts that are aimed at enhancing the life and well-being in general. Okay? And I certainly include then the visual arts, the performing arts, and the literary arts, the standard fare. But I also include architecture, and medicine, and essentially any area where we use human ingenuity and creativity in the service of humankind and beyond. In contrast, the destructive arts refer to any human activities or disciplines that are dedicated to the use of human ingenuity and creativity with the aim of destroying and or immiserating peoples, their cultures, or the biosphere more generally. So, and these include most obviously, yes, the art of war and killing, but essentially any disciplines and cultural practices that are devoted directly or indirectly to harming others and creating pain and suffering in their lives. So as for myself, and I suspect most of you, hopefully all of you, I side firmly with the creative arts. And quite frankly, I can't even imagine cheering on those committed to warfare or destruction of any kind. Please don't misunderstand me on this point either. I'm not completely naive on the matter. I can appreciate that there may be times then when peoples have to take up arms, for example, to defend themselves or their way of life, or to stop evildoers from inflicting much more extensive death and destruction if left unchecked. I get that. Rather, here I'm merely pointing out what I hope should be an obvious point that we'd always want to return to regularly in our lives, that I would hope we would all aspire to be the dominant MO, if you will. Should not, or don't we all in general want to be creative in one way or another? So I'm particularly terrible at, well, maybe not terrible, but I think I am, at dancing and drawing, for example, just to cite two simple examples. But I still deeply admire those who can express themselves through dance and drawing. I genuinely can appreciate their skills and what they bring, and I derive great joy from that. And indeed, when this happens, when people are creative in whatever fields and that they're able to be creative in, we all get to benefit we get to have an uplifting experience, if you will. The creator and the observer, or the consumer, if you will. So like last night, at the end of the dance show that was put on by the Syrian Kurds, the Koma Afrin, the entire audience was essentially in smiles and cheering wildly. And then the dancers were incredibly happy as well. You could tell on the expressions on their faces. And all I could think was, wow, imagine if we devoted all or nearly all of our energy to the creative arts rather than the destructive arts. And certainly we all have creative abilities that we could share to improve the world. I cannot dance or draw well, but I have some natural abilities, say more in the areas of music and language and even certain kinds of building, for example. And my wife has special creative skills in dancing and in singing and in cooking and in healing and so on. And at our son's wedding in Brazil almost 2 weeks ago, our sons came up to her and just raved about what a star she'd been, or she was, amongst all of the guests, both for her enthusiastic embrace of dance and all different styles of dance, and more generally, just simply for her kindness. So that to me is one of the greatest creative arts of all, our ability to develop our capacities for kindness. So I guess in general then, why don't we then exercise our creative capacities all of the time, or nearly, or the vast majority of the time? Don't most of us see the joy and the happiness that we bring to others and to ourselves when we're engaged in whatever creative arts we happen to excel in, or just in using our creative abilities in general to enhance the lives of those around us or our environments? So I'm going to examine these issues a bit further in the next vlog, with a special emphasis on distinguishing between lives devoted to the creative arts versus those committed to the destructive arts. And I'll then challenge you and each of us to spend as much time as we can devoted to the former rather than the latter. It's not too late. As ever, until next time, may you and yours continue to create peace in your lives, nurture love in your hearts, and dole out hugs in abundance. Peace.